All right, so Sarati Agubadia, the lead Nigeria Startup Act, as well as the Senior Special Assistant to President Buhari on digital transformation, is joining me right here. Welcome, Sarati, and congratulations, I must say.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's not up to 24 hours that the president, just a few hours ago, the president signed the startup bill, and this should be your first exclusive interview on this act, as it were, since President Buhari signed just a few hours ago.
I was on TV, yes.
Yes, on TV. That's what I'm saying. So welcome. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. I gave the viewers a brief timeline of how the document into the bill and act has, transversed in the last few months. But just give in 1 minute why this bill was necessary, and perhaps if you want to add to the history which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So this is the legal framework to help create an enabling environment. Like we've been saying recently, there are policies, there are regulations. Policies basically says what we're going to do. Regulation says what we shouldn't do. This is actually a law, right, that helps sets the framework and sets the formation on how the ecosystem or the practitioners within the ecosystem will interact with the government. One of the key things that I think you mentioned, one of the key things that the bill does set together is a council that you mentioned. And the council is actually comprised of key members of the government, chaired by Mr. President, vice chaired by the Vice President, and also a number of key ministers like, Honorable Minister Digital Economy, who will now be able to interact with the private sector on that council to determine and discuss matters that relate to the tech-enabled ecosystem.
Okay, you said two things now, and let me take you up on that. You said enabling environment, because I saw it, and I actually also mentioned enabling environment, but I was struggling to understand what enabling environment is. Because is it enabling environment? What kind of enabling environment will be built for tech startups that is different from an enabling environment for general other businesses in Nigeria? We're talking of good power supply, talking of good internet service. We're talking about if other people notice, it's been happening to me a lot. Recently, you'll be making a call, or even if you make a call, the data is going, your money is counting, the person you are calling is not hearing you, are not hearing the person, and MTN, Airtel, Glow, because all of them are in charge. They will be taking your money and all of that. So that's also part of enabling environment. So what does that context mean? So
we ultimately shouldn't conflict issues, right? What the Nigerian Startup Bill does is actually focuses in on a aggressively growing sector, right? We have all the resources to dominate this sector globally. Young people, intelligent young people, creative young people, and that's exactly where the idea of the bill started, right? Mr. President made a speech in January of 2021 where he said Nigerian youths are young, capable, creative people, and we should do something. You should create legislation to support them. Now, what the bill does is it focuses in on the tech-enabled ecosystem, and it creates, when you say enabling environment, it creates a number of linkages into government that helps them drive their visions into actualize their visions. So if you look at the council, for instance, the council is set up, as I've described, with a mixture of government and private sector. That's just one side of it. You now look at the idea of a portal, which really is a place where government will be able to provide services to this particular sector. So sort of the question you asked a few seconds, why not everybody? This was a deliberate move to help this particular sector.
So what are the things that we should be expecting within the enabling environment concept for tech startups? I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
So there are a number of things. Within the bill, you have tax incentives, right? Within the bill, you have access to all the resources as it relates to government. So if you're thinking CAC, patents, you're thinking research, you're thinking, because you need to be able to build and create these linkages to government. So research, education, the training is all built into the bill. If you think about, for instance, the idea of the seed funding, right, is also built in the bill, which is a minimum. The bill is the seed funding is about 10 billion annually, which is going to be given out to start commercial basis to startups. If you think about I've mentioned linkages. If you think about the collaborative nature of how policies are developed in Nigeria, which is, if you ask any startups, one of the key areas of concern. The way this is set up, policies will be co-created the same way the bill was co-created. right? So an agency will now be creating policies with the, I don't want to use the word affected, but with the customer base, which is actually the startups. So there's going to be that policy co-creation that will happen on the portal. And the way the council is set up.
So the agency you mean now is that council?
No,
that
so
will be co-creating.
So we have to look at it. When you think of government, there are multiple agencies,
yes,
right? So you can go off and start a business today, and your business is to provide services over the internet. From the morning to the night, you have to deal with a number of agencies. What this does is more so a collaboration. It brings all these agencies together, closer to the customer. I keep on saying customer, but I look at them as customers. Yes, I'm in government, right? Yes. So the customer being the startup, right? So it's now bringing them closer to the customer to provide services to the customer. So from this portal, you can do a CAC change, you could register for a patent, you could on there see all the schemes that are available for you based on your business and your business model. And you could from there be able to interact with government, right? So that's just on the looking for services. But now when we start talking about policies and regulations, the creation of those things, right, will now go through that same process that the bill went through, where it's now a collaboration between government and the private sector. So the bill, the foundational bill is based on collaboration and engagement primarily, right? It's to increase the collaboration because within that collaboration increase, we believe the value within this ecosystem is going to be seen.
Okay. The National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship, because of this act that has just been signed by Mr. President, that would also be established.
Yes.
I'm also thinking, where does these agencies fall? NITDA, for example, which is an agency specifically at least for the development of technology in Nigeria, where does it fall? The entrepreneurship side in the council, my mind quickly went to SMEDAN, which is the Small Business and Development Agency of Nigeria.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking about, isn't this also, like some people will say duplication of agencies? What exactly? I heard you clearly, but I'm just saying, are there clear-cut demarcations that the council will not be doing what NITDA, what SMEDAN, what NDE and all those agencies will be doing?
If I dare say, I would say this is a fantastic question, right? It actually hits at one of the key aspects of the bill. The bill, under no circumstances, duplicates any other agency, right? What it more so does is that it pulls them together, right? It doesn't duplicate the efforts of CAC, it doesn't duplicate the efforts of NITDA. In this bill, actually, NITDA serves as the secretariat of the council, right? But every other agency within government continues to do what they've always done, right? And the council and the secretariat will interact with them to create those linkages, right? I don't know if you understand the picture I'm
yes,
trying to
I'm trying to understand you when you said that the council will have a secretariat at NITDA. So does that mean that
NITDA, I'm sorry, when you say that way, NITDA is the secretariat to the council. Yes.
Does that mean that the council is another bureaucracy that will have staff and all of that?
No.
Okay, no. I needed to clear that.
We did not create any new institutions. We did not create any agencies.
Okay.
This is pretty much using the institutions and agencies that already exist. So that's why I keep saying the word collaboration. The bill is actually driving collaboration within government to help the tech-enabled ecosystem.
Okay, then let's talk about the seed fund, which you mentioned earlier, and I did mention it. I have information that is 10 billion naira. I don't know if
minimum. That's what the law says.
Yeah. Okay, where will that be gotten from, and when will it start? Because President Buhari, in the budget speech for 2023, which he did mention in the National Assembly just a few days ago, I did not hear that in the budget. Yeah. So I'm actually wondering where that will come from.
So, I mean, funny enough, this question was asked of me just as I drove here from somebody who's interested in the bill for their business.
Okay.
Right, so everybody's keen to understand this. So I would say we need to look at the process, right? The bill is is now an act. I still struggle with the idea of bill and act. I spent the last 2 years
talking about bill. A lot of people do that.
Yeah. So the act, right, was just passed yesterday. What we must do next is implement it, right? So implementation of the act, and also the second part is also state adoption. We're also looking to drive this to all states to adopt the bill and domesticate the bill. Now, the seed funding aspect of the bill will be managed by the NSIA, right? Okay. And they already manage these activities. So once again, this is an example of not creating anything new, but using existing institutions within government to deliver this value to this particular sector, right? So the NSIA will manage this fund and will create the parameters in which they will deploy the funds to seed to startups, to early stage startups, exactly, right? Because if you think about it, the bill itself does not really address tech-enabled companies that are older than 10 years old. is 10 years and below.
I was coming to that.
Right, it's 10 years and below. Because the idea of this is really to catalyze the young startups, right? To really help them get their vision going.
Okay. I don't know if I got a sense of where the money will come from.
Oh. Let's put it this way. This was actually a point of contention. The way it was crafted in the bill, and which everybody will see soon, is that we left that for the council to decide, right?
Okay.
The reason being is that there's already several offers of agencies, right? They already do XYZs and multinationals who are very excited about this. And we had a conversation this morning with one. They are looking to help this fund. So it wasn't very important for us to state specifically because it's ultimately going to be a commercial fund managed by the NSIA, given to this particular sector, and there are a number of organizations that are already ready to put the money in, including government.
Including government.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that companies are required to obtain a certificate known as the startup label.
Yep.
Before they are being known as a startup entity.
Yep.
What does that mean? And for startups that have been existing even before now, what happens to them?
So the word that was used there, when you use certificate, it sounds like it's a registration. Well, it's actually labeling, right? We want to be able to say that you are a startup within Nigeria. And it's not that if you are a startup and you don't go into the labeling process, it means you're not a startup. It just means you don't need the Nigerian startup bill, right? This is what labels you into the incentives and whatever the bill has to offer for you for your business model, right? It's a process of saying, yes, you qualify.
To be known as a startup. Or
to participate, exactly.
To access the fund.
Exactly. So it's a word usage thing. If you say that if you're not labeled, you're not a startup, it's not true, right? Because if you're a startup and you don't want to access the Nigerian Startup Act, you don't need to be labeled. But ultimately, the belief is that for you to access, to get into the portal and a number of other things, you need to have a certain number of things. Who are you? What kind of company structure do you have? What percentage Nigerian ownership is here? What kind of, how old is the company? What do you do? Are you really doing digital? We have to ask those questions.
Okay. So, I know you have to go, but a lot of questions.
You can come back.
Yes, you can actually come back. So that means that if I want to be known or if I want to have that identity as a startup label, I have to register now with the council of Innovation.
You have to register on the portal.
On the portal, where I will access other government agencies. For example, now where I'm going to precisely is that if I'm known as a startup or if you're my startup and I go on the portal, should I have been registered with the CAC? Should I have a RC number? Should I have all those stuff?
Yes.
Isn't
yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not as if I'm just a new business, I'm a startup, and I go on the portal, or I
it's not that
get information from the council, and they can do everything, a one-stop shop for me?
Let's put it this way. These things are processes that we worked through the implementation process. But your question is 100% valid, right? As in, where and when do I start? Am I sitting in my house in Benin and saying I want to start a company and just go to this portal and everything is done? No. There are certain things you have to do to actually qualify. You have to already be a company to some extent, right? What kind of company you are you? English, right? So the timing in which you're able to access it is also important. Yes, so there's certain things you would have done already, but there's certain things that are difficult after you are a company. If you run a business in Nigeria, that this would make would make it easy.
Okay. I think we will leave it at that because I know you have to catch a flight. But just like you said, we'll do this again very soon, perhaps when you come back, so that we can understand more the nitty-gritty of this. But thank you for coming. I appreciate at least we are the first television breaking that and doing this morning since the president signed just a few hours ago. So for our viewers, you can actually also check out our YouTube channel to fully understand again what Osarity has spoken about, especially if you are a Nigerian startup. Thank you very much, Osarity.
Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Osarity Agubadia, who is the lead Nigeria Startup Act, and he's the senior special assistant to President Buhari on digital transformation. Let's quickly take a break, and I'll be looking at another topic, another guest, Dr. Andrew Nevin, the chief economist at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, will be joining me here. We'll be looking at Nigeria's brain exports. Can we actually grow our economy with our exports? Everybody wants to jackpot. Everybody's jackpotting. What are the implications? We'll be looking at that when we return from this break. Do stay.